Hello guys, my name is Shreyas. I'm an educator at an academy. You can follow me on the Learning app as well. You can see my new set of courses on the Learning app as well. So today I'm doing a lesson on internal combustion engines. So internal combustion engines, they are the type of engines like we have the digestive system in our body. The same way they act on the locomotive vehicles or the locomotive mechanisms. So if you have liked the lesson, please do rate it, review it and share it. And please do subscribe us on our YouTube channel, that is the Unacademy Engineering Students. Thank you. So guys, let's start with the course, Elements of Mechanical Engineering. So I have given my introduction already. My name is Shreyas. So this is my Unacademy user platform. Please do follow me over there for new set of courses. So turbines, engines and pumps is the course on which we'll be doing all our lessons on. So the target audience for this slide will be engineering students, general audience who are interested in mechanical entities, people who are interested in machine related mechanisms, and automobile enthusiasts. So the learning outcomes of this lesson will be, I'll be telling in detail about the internal combustion engines, a brief introduction about the external combustion engines, the classification of the IC engines, the parts of the internal combustion engines, as well as their usage in the IC engine metrology, as well as the terminology of some of the fundamental definitions in the IC engines. So internal combustion engines is our lesson for today. Let's start with the first set of slides. Before that, let's have a quote. Life is a 440 horsepower in a 2-cylinder engine. So internal combustion engine. So what are internal combustion engines? Internal combustion engines are the type of engines where the combustion of fuel they take place inside the engine cylinder. The engine is called internal combustion engine due to this phenomenon. So the examples include petrol engines and diesel engines. The principle of working IC engines will be discussed by me later when I go to the parts and all. So in IC engine, the burning gas inside the engine cylinder, it expands and it exerts force to the movable component called the piston. The motion from the piston, it is actually transferred to the crankshaft by intermediate mechanisms. The motion obtained at the crankshaft can be used to drive any machine or devices or performing of useful work. That is the reason IC engines, they are commonly used for mobile propulsions in vehicles as well as in portable machinery. So you can see this is the IC engine, the whole IC engine, how it looks actually inside the engine. These are the parts of the IC engine. The usages of these parts as well as the definition will be took by me in the coming 4 slides. So let's move on to external combustion engine. So if the combustion of fuel it takes place outside the cylinder, then it is called as external combustion engine. So the examples of this include the steam engines or the steam turbines. In IC engine, the heat obtained by burning the fuel outside the engine cylinder, it is used to convert water into steam. The steam is then by expanding and acting on the mechanism of the engine produces motion and usable work in the same manner as in IC engines. So these EC engines or the external combustion engines, they are commonly used for generating power or electricity. So this is nothing but the EC engines. How do they look actually? See, you can see the combustion. It is actually transformed into water, steam. The crankshaft rotating, piston, it is actually pushing here. The steam is expelled out. So the classification of IC engine, let's move on to the classification of IC engine. According to the type of fuel used, it is discreted as petrol engine. If the fuel uses petrol, then it's called as petrol engine. So diesel, fuel used as diesel. Gas engine, gaseous fuels like biogas or natural gas are used here. And biofuel engine, it is nothing but the engine uses mixture of more than one fuel. For example, mixture of diesel and natural gas as well as mixture of diesel and neem oil, etc. Then according to the method of ignition, spark ignition engine, if the fuel is ignited by an electric spark generated by a spark plug, then the engine is called as spark ignition engine. Then compression ignition engine, in these engines the fuel ignites when it comes in contact with the hot compressed air. And according to the number of strokes per cycle, a 4-stroke engine, if the engine completes its working cycle in 4 different strokes of the piston or 2 revolutions of the crankshaft, it is called as 4-stroke. Similarly, if the engine completes its working cycle in 2 different strokes of the piston or 1 revolution of the crankshaft, it is called as 2-stroke engine. And according to the cycle of combustion, it is called as Otto cycle engine. That is, if the combustion of the fuel takes place at constant volume, then it is Otto cycle. If it takes place at constant pressure, it's diesel cycle. And if dual combustion means combustion of fuel first takes place partially at constant volume and then at constant pressure. So according to the number of cylinders, they are termed as single cylinder engine and multi-cylinder. So single cylinder engine consists of only one cylinder. Multi-cylinder, it consists of 2, 3, 4 or maximum number of cylinders. According to the arrangement of cylinders, it is named as vertical engine. If the cylinder is arranged in a vertical position, then vertical cylinder. Horizontal cylinder is arranged in horizontal position. Inline engine, the cylinders are arranged inline. Most trucks are of inline configuration. Then radial engine, cylinders are arranged along the circumference of a circle. Then you have something called as V engine. It is a combination of 2 inline engines which are equally set at an angle. Mostly passenger vehicles, they have this V-type configuration. And opposed type engine, they are nothing but cylinders which are arranged opposite to each other. Then by the method of cooling, according to the method of cooling, air-cooled engine, if the heated cylinder walls are cooled by circulating air, then the engine is called as air-cooled engine. If water is circulated through the jacket surrounding the heated cylinder walls, then it is called as water-cooled engine. Then coming to the last thing, that is, according to the users, they are named as stationary engine for stationary purposes, automobile engine for automobile purposes, marine engine for submarine purposes, and aircraft engine for aeronautical purposes. Let's move on to the parts of IC engine. So let's start with the first one, the cylinder. The cylinder, as the name indicates, it's a cylindrical shaped component in which the combustion of fuel takes place. The cylinder is usually made from grey cast iron or steel alloys in order to withstand high pressure and temperature generated inside the cylinder due to the combustion of fuel. Cylinder head, it is the top portion of the cylinder which is closed by a removable component called cylinder head. It is usually made from cast iron or alloys of cast iron. The cylinder head is designed to incorporate inlet and exhaust valves for other components like spark plug or fuel injector. Then we have something called as the piston. It is a cylindrical shaped component that fits perfectly inside the cylinder. The functions may be to compress the charge, to receive the force, and it acts as a guide or supporting member, and it also serves as a carrier as it takes or receives the force from the crankshaft of the connecting rod. Then you have something called as piston rings. They are nothing but a few grooves which are provided to accommodate the piston rings or the piston head. Then you have something called as connecting rod. Connecting rod, they form a link between the piston and the crankshaft. The upper end of the connecting rod is connected to a piston by means of a piston pin, while the lower end is connected to the crankshaft to the crank. Then you have the crank. The crank, it is nothing but a lever with one end of it connected to the lower end of the connecting rod, while the other end is connected to the crankshaft. Now the crankshaft, it helps in the transmission of power developed by the engine through the flywheel, clutch, transmission and differential to drive the vehicle. The crankshaft is forged or cast from an alloy of steel or nickel. Then you have something called as the crankcase. Crankcase is the lower part of the cylinder block that encloses the crankshaft and provides a reservoir for the lubricating oil. Then the inlet manifold, outlet manifold, these are nothing but the other things of the flywheel, etc. and all. So the inlet manifold, it is nothing but a passage in a 4-stroke engine through which the charge enters into a cylinder, whereas the outlet manifold is nothing but the exhaust port. You can think the passage in a 4-stroke engine through which the products of combustion escape into the atmosphere. Then there is something called as the inlet and outlet valves, which are nothing but the control devices used in 4-stroke engines fitted in the manifolds for the purpose of charging the cylinder and also for the discharging the products of combustion. Then you have ports, which are of 4 types, namely the inlet, outlet and transfer ports. They are passages which are cut circumferentially in a 2-stroke engine cylinder valves. Then you have something called as cam, which is a machine element which is designed to control the movement of the valves. And the camshaft, it is an output shaft which supports the cam. Then the bed plate, it is nothing but the lower portion of the crankcase. It is held in position by means of bolts. Governor, it is a control device used to maintain the engine speed constant by regulating the charge when the load changes. You might have heard the term speed governor. So this is what the governor of a IC engine refers to. Then there is something called as valve springs. There are springs fitted inside the valves. Then coming to flywheel, it is a heavy disc which is mounted on the crankshaft. It is used as an energy reservoir. Then the spark plug, it is a component fitted on the cylinder head of petrol to initiate spark for igniting the charge. And then you have the injector, which is a component fitted on the cylinder head of diesel engines, whereas spark plug is for petrol engines to spray a metered quantity of diesel oil which gets ignited by the high temperature air. So this is what I was telling about: camshaft, cam, intake valve, that is the inlet valve, cylinder block, cylinder head, spark plug, valve spring. In the diesel engine, instead of spark plug, there will be carburetor where the fuel oil will be injected. Let's move on to the IC engine terminology. These are some of the fundamental definitions. Bore is nothing but the inside diameter of the cylinder. The crank radius, it is nothing but the linear distance between the shaft center and the crank pin center. Then there is something called as dead center. There are two positions of the crankshaft where the crank and connecting rod are in line. It is differentiated into top dead center or inner dead center, which is the extreme position of the piston towards cover end of the cylinder, whereas bottom dead center or outer dead center is the extreme position of the piston towards the crank end side of the cylinder. Then there is something called a stroke. Stroke is nothing but twice the crank radius. You can call it as like that also, or else it is the linear distance traveled by the piston from one dead center to another dead center position. So this is actually the internal combustion engine which I have took the pic. So you can see here the piston over here. You can see the spark plug. This is actually a model. You can see the rotating shaft also here. I will show the detailed picture next again. Then coming to the swept volume, it is the volume through which the piston sweeps during a stroke. And then there is something called as clearance volume, which is the volume included between the top of the piston and cylinder head when the piston is at top dead center or inner dead center. Then the compression ratio, it is the ratio of the total cylinder volume to the clearance volume. Then the piston speed, it is the distance traveled by piston per unit time, and the cycle of operation is the complete series of events in which the suction, compression of charge, burning of air, and expansion and expulsion, all these working stages take place or accomplished before the repetition occurs. So yeah, I told I'll show you a detailed picture of the IC engine. So you can see this is a detailed picture of the IC engine. You can see the rotating shaft. It shows the crank radius. This crank radius, it shows where actually the engine is headed to. You can see the exhaust valve where the exhaust gases are pulled out. You can see the spark plug ignition over here also. You can see actually from inside you can see this part, the bulgy part is actually where the piston is there, where it actually moves, where the spark plug or the fuel ignition or the combustion takes place. So thank you guys. Any questions, please drop those in the comments box below. You can find me on my Unacademy user platform, which is mentioned over here. And if you have liked the presentation, please do rate the course, review the course, and recommend the lesson. And please do follow me on my Unacademy user platform, which is mentioned over here. Thank you. Have a good time.